Hi everybody. Helping employees learn new skills and get better at what they do to move ahead in their careers has been one of the strategic agenda for most of the organization these days. Upskilling and reskilling has been a talk of the town in today's fast-moving disruptive market. Hi, I'm Sheetal Malhotra. I am a L&D professional. I've worked with some great organizations like HCL Technologies and NIIT Technologies in the past for close to 10 years before I really got lucky and became part of this very unique organization called Three Pillar Global. I work here as a manager L&D. This is a place where learning and upskilling of employees are one of the key priorities. My role here is a very interesting one. It is to establish a global L&D team by making L&D a strategic partner to business and a strong enabler to the supply chain of the organization. We realize to be able to get there, upskilling is a great tool. It has a huge potential of making employees learn and acquire new skills, which prepares them for future business opportunities the organization might have. Acquiring new skills could be a long process. Hence, periodic assessments play a vital role. In this video, I'll be talking about elements to a successful assessment framework based on my research and based on my experience over all these years. A good assessment framework could be the one which has the ability to show the entire learning journey of learners, maybe by means of a scale. It could be 1 to 5 or maybe something like beginner to an expert level. Most important is what does 1 stands for you and what is 5 in your organization context. It is very, very important to predefine these descriptors. Let's talk about it now. When we start upskilling, it is pivotal, it is very important to gauge the current level of understanding of your learners. So a great start point would be pre-assessment. It can be done by using various methods. It can be done by means of a face-to-face interview by a mentor or a subject matter expert, by using a computer-based assessment, or maybe a simple simple questionnaire which can be created by leveraging the knowledge of our internal experts on that skill. The results of the pre-assessment are to be captured in an assessment tool. Now, this assessment tool can be an automated tool or maybe a simple Excel sheet or a Google sheet, which we generally prepare for all the learning initiatives, where we mention all the basic details of each of our learners, their name, their current skill, their project name, their manager name, years of experience, so on and so forth. Here I would like to put a stop and again recommend 2 things. When we start the upskilling program and we do pre-assessment for our learners to gauge their current understanding, my recommendation here is to pre-prepare some of the dummy projects which can be assigned to these learners in the beginning. Now, what is the relevance of allocating these dummy projects in the beginning? While the learners will undergo upskilling program, they will keep going back to their dummy project and keep building upon it. Maybe if it is an IT organization, maybe keep writing code in that dummy project. It will give them an opportunity to use the learning they are acquiring by means of an upskilling program. So this is one dummy project. Second is along with the dummy project, it is always advisable to all the L&D teams out there to give a manual to each of your learners. The manual is nothing but which has some milestone listed for each of the learners. Okay, the first day your mid assessment will happen, then the next assessment will happen, which I will talk about in a bit. There'll be a third assessment and there'll be a fourth assessment. So my assessment framework has 4 steps: pre-assessment, mid-assessment, pre-final assessment, and a final assessment. So if I would prepare the manual with milestones for my learners, I would give them a tentative idea: when will the pre-assessment happen, how many mid-assessments happen, and what will be their periodicity. And when will they happen? When will the pre-final assessment will happen, and when will the final assessment will happen? So the next step, once the pre-assessment is done, is towards assessing the learners on the mid-assessment. Now this has to be seeing how the learners are doing with the dummy project. So we allocated the dummy project, we did the pre-assessment. Now use the same scale and do a pre-assessment of your learners. Maybe the first pre-assessment could be done after spending 2 weeks in an upskilling program. Use the same scale, and how nice would that be if, for example, one of the learners scored 5 in the pre-assessment, 1 is the best and 5 being the lowest rating, and is now able to score 4 in the mid-assessment after spending 2 weeks in an upskilling program. It will show such a positive learning curve. He or she is rising from a 5 rating to 4 in the mid assessment. So remember, the rating is to be captured in the same sheet which has basic details of the learner, and you captured the pre-assessment scores in that sheet. So go ahead, put the mid-assessment ratings on the same sheet. Now, how many mid-assessment do we want to do, or how many mid-assessments are required? It totally depends on the duration of the upskilling program. If, for example, the upskilling program is for 45 days, I would say my recommendation would be do it on a bi-weekly basis. Go back to the learners, do the assessment on a bi-weekly basis. You will see a good needle improvement. Don't overdo it. If you will do it every week, you might not see much movement in their skill level, and that might not create a great picture. So my recommendation, do it every 2 weeks. Now the next step, which we all might be thinking, it could be final assessment, because pre is done, mid is done. Next that comes to our mind is final. I prefer to do it little differently, and I'll talk about it. Once the upskilling program is over, I prefer to do a pre-final assessment, or I advise each one of you to do a pre-final assessment. It could be a final review of the project the learner has put together, the dummy project which we allocated to each of our learners in the beginning, and a conversation with each of the learners to check their readiness on the new acquired skill. This being the final step is very critical and very crucial. 2 things as a reminder: same scale is to be used, either 1 to 5 or beginner to an expert. Scores are to be captured on the same sheet. Once we are able to capture that, here comes a little twist. It's time to go back to your learner and ask them to self-evaluate and give rating to their own selves. Give a rating to their own selves on a scale of 1 to 5. And very important, a qualitative feedback about themselves. I'm good at Visual Studio. I struggle with maybe writing basic code in Python. I'm just taking these hypothetical technical names. And next step for me is to learn, go to the next level of Python, and maybe urge them to be very specific, write those specific details of what will lead them or take them to the next level. So once that is done, the self-evaluation of learners is done. It is go back to the trainers and mentors once again. I'm sure by now we will have the final quantitative rating on a scale of 1 to 5. Ask the trainers and mentors to give a qualitative rating for each of their learners. Capture that in the same sheet. Also ask one more very critical question from the trainers and mentors. Ask them, to give a rating or to give their inputs on readiness of each of their learner as per their current role. So I'll explain that with an example, and it totally depends on the role and designation matrix you have in your organization. So for example, if a learner is a software engineer and he or she was in a Python program, so the question which all L&D professional, L&D teams we should ask from our trainers and mentors is the learner ready to play the role of software engineer 1 in Python technology? it will give us some idea about whether the learner is ready to uh, play his current role in the new acquired skill. Now, once that is done, it's time for the climax. It's time for the final assessment. And for the final assessment, I would say let's go back to customers of the product. Here, who could be the customers? The customers would be project managers or program managers. Again, it depends on the role and designation matrix you have in your organization, or maybe a delivery lead. In 3 Pillar, we call project managers as a delivery lead. So go back to delivery leads or project managers, because ultimately, these are those people who will be deploying these upskilled employees in their teams. So the final assessment should be done by them. The final rating and the qualitative inputs are to be given from them. While they are assessing these upskilled employees, it completely depends, whether they are evaluating them on the current business need, which is on the table, or maybe they are evaluating these upskilled employees for the future business need. Just remember, takers will be same. These will be project managers who will be deploying our upskilled employees in their respective teams on new business opportunities. So their input is a key. And one more point I would like to touch base upon here is, and again, it depends totally on organization to organization, how will we show a green flag to employees who pass the upskilling program or who graduate out of the upskilling program? Now it depends. It completely depends on organizations. Organization might want to decide a criteria that anybody successfully completing the upskilling program should be able to score a 2 or a 1 rating on the assessment scale. Remember, 5 was the lowest rating and 1 is the best rating. So organization might say, if the learner is not able to reach up to 1 or 2 rating, the person still has some time more to spend within the upskilling program. But if you ask me, I would say if a learner is able to show an upward trend by an increased score in the final assessment, and the project manager's feedback is that the person is scalable, I think it's really, really good.